So what we've done here is we've actually taken our sodium hydroxide and we've measured out 5 mils of sodium hydroxide. Now, next thing I've done is I've taken 5 mils of our iron nitrate here. So you can go ahead and you can see our physical properties of iron nitrate. I've got 5 mils measured out. And next up, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these 5 mils and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pour them into this test tube here. Now I've got my 5 mils of iron nitrate. So next step, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna use my crucibles and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna drop this iron nitrate very gently into my Erlenmeyer flask. So you can see that I'm actually gonna use my crucible tongs. Very gently, I'm going to drop it into my Erlenmeyer flask. Now, the reason that we're using a test tube and Erlenmeyer flask is you can see I've actually got my 2 reactants, but they're not mixing together. There's actually a layer of glass between them. So these are my 2 reactants combined, but they haven't actually combined yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab the total mass of reactants before. So to do that, I'm gonna go ahead over to my balance here. I'm gonna place this, I'm gonna press 0 first, make sure this is 0 for me. And I'm gonna place this onto my balance. And I can see that my mass of everything before, my 2 reactants before, is actually 119.7. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pause, and we're gonna record that number. Now that I've actually got my mass of my reactants recorded, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna stopper my flask. I'm actually going to gently invert my flask. And what this is gonna do is it's allowing my reactants to actually mix. So my chemical reaction is actually happening. My reactants have actually mixed together. So we wanna take a second and we wanna observe and see if there's signs of a chemical change. So you might wanna pause the video at this point, go back to the beginning part and see what did my reactants look like before, what did they look like after, do I actually have a chemical change happening at this point? Once we've decided if there's a chemical change, I wanna go ahead and I wanna measure my reactants after. My reaction has happened, so I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna place on the exact same balance my reactants, and I'm gonna see if they've changed. Oh, I forgot to take my stopper off. There we go. Stopper off. So I now have my reactants after, and if I take a look, I've got 119.4. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pause the video, and we're going to record our reactants after as 119.4. So for my next reaction, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have this reaction take place in an open vessel. So just remember, last time you saw me actually put a stopper on top, that was happening in a closed vessel. So my entire reaction, let's grab it, took place in a closed vessel. Now we're gonna take a look at a reaction in an open vessel. So we've got our 2 reactants here. We've got our Alka-Seltzer tab, and we've actually got our water. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put our Alka-Seltzer tab into our reactant, or into our cup here. We're gonna use this cup because this time we're gonna be using an open vessel. How I'm gonna do it this time is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm actually gonna have this reaction take place on my balance here. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put my vessel on there. And remember, I have to add my second reactant. My second reactant is, in this case, is water. So this is my second reactant here, it's water. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add my 50 mils. And I'm gonna see at the very start of this reaction what my actual mass is. So at the start of my reaction, my mass is 51.36. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna record this to start 51.36. Let's zoom in and let's see what's happening in our cup. So in our cup, we can actually see that we've got bubbles that are actually forming within our cup. So we want to think about, is this reaction a sign of a chemical change? I've got bubbles that are happening in my cup, so is this a sign of a chemical change? We're actually going to let this reaction come to completion. So coming to completion means that we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna let those bubbles go ahead and dissipate. Once those bubbles have dissipated, we know the reaction has actually come to an end, and we're gonna go ahead and we're going to grab the final mass. One thing that we can see that since we actually had this reaction happen on a balance, we can see that we actually have a change in mass happening. So in this case, we have 51.1. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna record that as my final mass, 51.1. Oh, it's changing. Hey, come on in. 51.08 grams. We're gonna go ahead and have that be our final mass.